Welcome to Spotlight on Schools. I'm your host, Jim Strauss. We focus on the Rochester City Schools. Every Saturday morning, I have lunch with Ron the Professor. We talk about issues that concern the community. And on Saturday morning, Erica Bryant's column comes out. Now, he's an early bird, and so he always gets to read the entire paper before I do. And frequently, he talks about what's in Erica Bryant's column, and I haven't read it yet. Now, Erica Bryant's column often, in fact, almost always talks about community issues. It's always very thoughtful. Frequently, it's humorous, and very often it talks about education issues. Now, when he tells me about it, I have to wait to go home to read it. Well, today, I get to Erica Bryant first. So, Ron, listen and enjoy. I am pleased to welcome Erica Bryant to Spotlight on Schools. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, Ron and I, first of all, have a couple questions for you. First of all, tell us your background, how you get to be here, and also how do you get such a gig that you get to write about stuff that you want to every week in the Democrat and Chronicle?
Well, it didn't start out like that. I started at the Democrat and Chronicle when I was a freshman in college. I had an internship. And as an intern, you basically do whatever stories the other reporters don't want. So I covered a lot of bed races. I wrote about senior citizen softball games. I wrote about a gas station in East Rochester that also sells lobster. So it was a lot of, those stories were fun, but I had to work my way up, basically, to the gig that I have now. I covered some suburbs. I covered East Rochester and around Decoit, and I was an editorial writer when I first started, and then I eventually became the city schools reporter, and I covered education mainly in the city, but also trends around the county. And after doing that for a while, I was offered an opportunity to try out for a columnist position, and I wrote some test columns. They liked them, and that was that. So I've been doing this about 2 years now.
Mm-hmm. You were raised in Rochester. You went to a private
Yes.
school, as I understand.
I graduated from Mercy High School, 1999.
Mm-hmm. And your interest, perhaps, in the schools of Rochester stems from your time as an education beat writer?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Well, your last column, we're taping this in early April. Your last column, you wrote about channeling Tina Turner for a Rock the Arts concert last Sunday. You were planning to sing Proud Mary. How did that go?
Well, I did not faint, and I did not fall off the stage, and no one threw tomatoes at me, so I was very happy.
Okay, and I understand we have some video, so we'll probably be watching that now as we're talking. Okay, now obviously the column that you wrote underscores a deeper concern that you and others have about the state of today's arts education. Can you speak a little about that?
Well, the reason that they invited me to participate in their fundraiser was that I had written a column talking about ways that different organizations are helping city students who don't have the opportunity to take private music lessons or might not be able to afford a violin or those types of things, because when school budgets get squeezed, arts is often the first thing to go. And the gentleman who started the organization, Rock Arts Advocate, he went to East High School back when they had a dedicated school accompanist. And that's almost unheard of now. So basically, he and I agree that arts education is important, because it's just a beautiful thing to have in your life, and it helps you academically also. And so I think it's sort of short-sighted to not foster that ability in kids who have talent, and even kids who don't. It's just something good to learn about. And unfortunately, it's getting squeezed. And as Sean said, he used to teach in a school. They're trying to use music as a way of teaching the sort of ELA math, which is, I'm the last person in the world to say that I don't want kids learning how to write and read, but writing assessments for music class is not going to, teach the joy of music to children. So that's how that got started, basically, or my involvement in the concert.
Okay, let's move on to a couple of other columns that you wrote, and these were about East High. In the first of the two, you described a visit to a classroom that you made that I think probably surprised you. Can you tell us about that first one?
Sure. I got an email from a teacher at East, and she said, you have to come in and see what I'm dealing with. And because I write about education, so I said, sure. And she basically snuck me in. And I sat in on her class for a couple of Friday classes. And it was very, I'm trying to be polite about this, but it was just chaos. There were students who were getting up and walking around the room. There was one student came in, he had been punched in the mouth on the way to school, or on the way to his class, and he spit blood on the floor. Kids were passing around their cell phones and showing videos, and basically the teacher was not listened to at all. Nothing that the teacher said was heeded. She would tell kids to get down off the desks. They would just flat out say no, or they'll say, I'm almost done with what I'm doing, or there was totally no respect. And I came from nuns, so I thought that this was so wrong, that you have a situation where a teacher will be so disrespected like that. And the thing that really touched me was that there were maybe, 4 or 5 kids that were sitting in the class being quiet, trying to do the worksheet, and trying to ask questions. It was a question about a tornado. And the teacher just had no chance or no opportunity to talk to the student because she couldn't be heard, and the student, there were so many fires to put out in the room that it was impossible to get any learning done. And I just said to myself, I don't know how any child is going to come out of this classroom and walk away with any knowledge about, the lesson at all. And so I was upset having seen this, and I just didn't know. And I'm not saying that this is representative of East High School. I'm not saying it's representative of the city school district. This is one classroom. I made a couple of visits and saw what I saw. But it was a situation where there were a bunch of kids that were very disruptive, and there was nothing that the teacher could do about it. And the teachers, they're not allowed to actually take cell phones from the kids. They're not allowed to, obviously they can't, if a child won't get off the desk, they can't physically move the child off the desk. That's not allowed. So I don't know. I don't know what more the teacher could have done. She tried, but.
I'm a Facebook friend of the Rochester Teacher Association Facebook, and so I got to read their page afterwards. There were quite a few responses. A number of them said this was an unfair depiction of typical classrooms and typical kids, but other reactions basically said, welcome to my world, and which I suppose is not an unexpected response that you get in both camps. Well, go ahead.
Oh, and I was going to say, and I think that this Rochester City School District gets beat up a lot, and I understand where the teachers are coming from, where they're saying we don't need more imagery of bad students and bad classrooms. And I would not say that it's a typical classroom, and it's not. I'm sure there are many classrooms that are very excellent, but I'm a reporter, and I saw what I saw, and that did happen, and it's not uncommon because I got lots of emails from teachers saying, thank you for showing that it's not just a lack of teaching ability, or the teachers aren't just on vacation and don't care. It's that it's very hard to break through some of the issues and some of the problems that the teachers and the students are up against.
You wrote a second column a little while later that readdressed that experience. In that column, you suggested the idea of creating a school where only those who wanted to be there to get an education, would attend. Now, when I read that, I thought, is she serious? Were you serious?
I was. I was serious. This was a visceral, emotional response to what I had seen, and my feeling bad for the kids, the 4 or 5 kids that were in the class that were trying to learn about the tornadoes. It was not a researched plan that would be presentable, to the superintendent. But what I thought, and it didn't even have to be a separate school. It could be just a program or one class, or because I don't know how many. Because it wouldn't have been everybody in that class wouldn't have been interested in it. It would have been only probably 4 kids. So those 4 kids, if they could have their own area or some kind of place where the kids who want to follow the rules and don't want to swear at the teacher and don't want to walk around the classroom and just want to sit in sit in their seat and learn, and have it be like a sort of a normal school experience, just basic normal school experience where they would be able to have that. And I don't think you should have to go to private school to have that. I don't think you should have to go to a charter school to have that. I don't think you should have to move out to the suburbs to have that. I think everybody deserves a chance to have that.
Yeah, you use the word normal, and normal there.
Right.
Yeah. My question, what immediately came to my mind was, well, where those kids who then will not go to those classrooms, where will they go, and what would that look like?
Well, they could just stay in the in the classrooms that they're in now. I mean, it would be sort of a situation where it wouldn't be you're excluded. It would be if you want to come to this other classroom where it's quiet,
Where there isn't anyone
Where
who's
the-
interested in learning.
right? Then you can. So it would be sort of a choice for the students to make, and I think that the choice aspect of it is important because it wouldn't be no one would be forced to be in the class, and no one would be forced to not be in the class. Everyone can come as long as you be quiet or as long as you follow the rules.
No. Be quiet and follow the rules. Oh my. Well, let's continue to talk about East. Since those couple of columns, some information has come down from the State Education Department, which said you have to do, to superintendent, you have to do something about East. Offered 5 options. 1, close it. 2, close it and reopen it with a completely reorganized staff and administration. 3, allow a charter school to open in that facility. 4, allow the State Education Department to operate it. And 5, to allow another institution like a college or a university to operate it. Superintendent Vargas says he will not close it, and he doesn't want to reopen it with a completely reorganized staff. The State Education Department has never operated a school. That leaves charter school and another institution to run it. And he's been calling for that, for a college or a university to step up. So far, none have done that, and so far, a charter school has not stepped up formally. And there's a deadline, the end of April for
30th.
something to happen. What's your thoughts?
Well, if you want to know what I would like to see, I would like to see I'll tell you what I don't want to see first. What they've done in the past when a school is failing is they break it up into different new schools in the same building, Franklin, and then they give the schools new names and they mix around the teachers, but it's going to be the same concentration of poverty, it's going to be the same issues. It's going to be the same sort of the same problems are going to come up. There's still going to be kids who are coming in from harsh situations who aren't necessarily, I won't say not ready to learn, but they've got other things interfering with their ability to learn. And I think going back to the East column, I would say that the kids who are having problems that are causing them to act out or whatever, for whatever reason, those problems need to be addressed. And I think that until you address sort of the root causes of, why would a kid think it's okay to call his teacher an awful name in class? Like, that kid obviously has needs that go beyond academics. And I think that if the needs that are behind the academic problems aren't addressed, then it doesn't matter what configuration East takes. It doesn't matter what you call the school. It doesn't matter, you make it, the Bioscience Medicine Academy of Excellence, collegiate, whatever. But if you don't address the root problems, then nothing will happen. So what I would like to see is for an organization to come in and say, yes, it's a school, but we're going to focus on sort of the social, psychological aspect or social psychological side of the student, because there's the Mental Health Association talks about sort of trauma and how it impacts the brains of young children who are growing up, especially in really, really bad situations in urban poverty. So I'll give you an example.
I'll tell you what,
oh,
let's
sorry.
hold that example because we're out of time for this segment. Let's come back. We're going to talk about the deconcentration of poverty, which is something that you've been interested in. We'll stay right there. We'll come right back. Welcome back to Spotlight on Schools. We're talking with Erica Bryant, a columnist for the Democrat and Chronicle. We were just talking about some of the baggage that some of these kids carry into schools to make it difficult sometimes to just concentrate on what's happening in the classroom. You were going to give us an example.
So at the Nathaniel Rochester School, which is over on Adams Street, the 5th graders published a book. And it was a book, the writing assignment was a challenge that you've overcome. And so for 5th graders, you would be hoping for something like, I couldn't get my locker open, or, I lost my keys, or something like that. But the things that the kids were writing about were so sad. I mean, one kid wrote that he was walking down Genesee Street, and he was with his uncle, and his uncle was shot. So he had witnessed a shooting. Another kid had written about how he was sad because his father had been taken to jail. Another kid wrote about he was sad because it was another shooting, and this time the person didn't survive. The one kid's uncle survived, and this person lost. I think it was a godmother. So it was almost as if there were some stories that were just regular 5th grade trauma, but there were stories that were very, very serious. And so on Sunday, there was an article about how Superintendent Vargas is trying to get one social worker per school. And I remember being in that school and walking past the social worker's office, and there would be just kids out the door who had probably been either sent by a teacher or for whatever reason. And the social worker it seemed like every time I walked past the door, it was just a lot of children who were waiting. And so my belief is that it's great that we're moving up to having at least one per school, but that still seems very, very low to have one person responsible for the sort of social and emotional health of a student population when you have those kinds of traumas at such a young age. And I once wrote about a family that had been involved in a drug raid. Basically, the police came, there was evidence of drugs. They came, knocked down the door in the middle of the night, and arrested the parents or handcuffed the parents. And can you imagine that if you're a kid and you see that happen to your family, and then you have to go to school the next day or a week later or whenever, and to try to, they say that the kids' brains can't breathe when you have that level of stress, and you're in the fight or flight response, and you expect these bad things to happen, and they say that it's like post-traumatic stress disorder, like things that soldiers experience. It can be the same for kids. And so to try to have some sort of mechanism to deal with that, I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if it's more social workers. I don't know if it's a curriculum that is sort of trauma sensitive or what, but I think that addressing that is extremely important. And if you don't, then it doesn't matter what shape the new school will be.
Let's move on. East High really is just, which we've been talking about before the break, was just one symptom of a district in deep trouble. You've written several columns that address in one way or another the issue of concentration of poverty. Many of the behaviors that you saw in East are typical of young people trapped in a culture of poverty. Now, there have been several efforts in the local level to attempt to deconcentrate poverty in education. You wrote a story a couple years ago, or a column rather, about the proposed Rochester Regional School being promoted by education activist William Calla, among others. He was here, by the way, talking about that last year.
Oh, great.
Can you tell us about that and what happened?
Sure. Well, William Calla, who was the superintendent of the Fairport School District, and I think he's back now as acting superintendent.
Yeah, and he was
for a
interim
brief
in
period.
Rochester for a while.
And he served as interim in Rochester, and he believes that the solution to the problems in the city school district is basically that you cannot have a school district that has such a high concentration of poverty. I mean, I think the Martin Luther King School on Clinton has something like 99% or 97%. It's extremely, extremely high. And to have a concentration of all those kids who have got all those poverty-related issues, it's unworkable, basically. And
it's the highest in the state. It's the 5th highest in the country.
Right. And so what he was trying to do was trying to start a process by which poverty would be deconcentrated by starting one school. It would be a regional school. It would draw from everywhere. It would be sort of a lottery system, so that you wouldn't have it would be sort of a blind lottery system, so that people would be invited to come randomly. And so then the hope would be that it would be more of a representative section of of what Monroe County looks like, as opposed to the super segregated schools that we have now. And the thing is, and when I wrote about this 2 years ago, he was very frustrated because he'd been working on it for 2 years at that point, and he just kept running into more and more bureaucratic roadblocks. And then the one superintendent left, and then Vargas came in, and so it sort of had to restart from scratch, in terms of the process. And they were trying to decide on the building and work out the mechanism, and and he was at the time, he said he was he's asking how many years can he bang his head against the wall, but I think it's important enough that he's willing to keep trying. But it just sort of shows the tangle of bureaucracy, and sort of everything is entrenched, and it's like we have to do things the same way that we've always done them, even though it's not successful.
You cited some research that a number of other people have cited too, and it's a 40% figure, which says that if you can get down to 40% of people who need free and reduced lunch, which is one measure of poverty,
Right.
you can you can reduce some of the bad behaviors. You can model good behavior from the other 60% while not harming that 60%.
And that's the most important point, because that's why people are so opposed to deconcentrated
Right, they're
poverty.
afraid of that people
you
that
don't
you
want-
describe in your editorial.
Right.
That those people in East will come out to our place and look what will happen to our classrooms.
To our classrooms, right. But from the research suggests that that's not what's going to happen.
Right.
That what would happen is that the greater culture would rule, or well, I don't want to say culture, but the greater how
They'll
do I
model
say
better
it?
behaviors, and
Yeah.
and people will tend to behave the same way.
Right.
We have seen that work. Now, it mentioned a couple places. For example, that model for the Rochester Regional School was modeled on a Metro Early College High School on the campus of Ohio State University.
Right.
And he tried that. They were going to center it. He wanted the location to be at Nazareth.
At Nazareth, right.
To be outside of the city, so that people would be from the city would go out, but that people from the county would be more
Right.
likely to
it's
perhaps
nice.
send them there, rather than to.
The Franklin campus or somewhere like that,
Yes.
because I think that
Yes.
but I think so I think that it could work. I mean, the farther away it gets from the original idea as the years go on, then it seems as if they're up against
Well,
some-
there's a new model being proposed, which you've written about, and this is being suggested by Board of Education President Van White. His document is called "Moving Beyond Reform: It's Time for a Revolution." What he's calling these opportunity districts, and it kind of builds on the urban-suburban program, which that only affects about 500 students,
Right.
and it only involves a few districts contiguous, mostly on the west side of Rochester. But tell us about these opportunity districts.
Well, it would be opportunity districts would be districts in the city that have a high concentrations of poverty that would be allowed to go to school in a suburban district, maybe one bordering the city or one elsewhere. So I believe Van White was hoping that he would be able to convince school districts to take on some younger children, I think kindergarten through third grade perhaps, and to allow them to go to school in the school in their school districts. So it would be like urban suburban program, but it would be sort of a larger version of it. And when he first announced it, he thought that he was going to be able to get it sort of up and running by the September afterwards. That didn't work out. So I don't know what went on behind the scenes or why that goal was not met, but I think that there might be, now that he's president, perhaps he'll have more luck. I guess we'll see.
Well, he just became president. He's got a lot of ideas. We have a mayor who's becoming more and more involved. What we need to do, it appears to me, is to get the county involved, to get the county to say yes. And there are a few people who are saying yes out there. It remains to be seen. But the dialogue is not just starting right now. It started in 2006. It may have fallen back, but it continues to be talked about.
And the Presbyterian churches are actually going to North Carolina to study, because they read the book. It's called "There Are No Bad Schools Here," or "There Are No Bad Schools in Wake County." Or
You're
something
talking
like
about Wake County?
Yeah.
And Charlotte Mecklenburg?
So they're going to go down and actually visit and speak to some of the leaders down there who to talk about how such a model could be brought up to Rochester.
Wake County did have a countywide school district. And apparently it's working pretty well. So good. All right, we have a couple minutes left. Let's talk about a couple of articles you wrote, columns you wrote that talked about, well, that you were pretty critical of a teacher rating system and the Common Core that sort of led to that.
Well, because I went and I got a copy of the teacher sort of grading manual, because this was right after the teachers had sued the state saying that it was unfair. So I said, okay, well, let me look and see how does it work. So it's 121 pages, and there's all different there's different formulas, and then they have it's so complicated. I'm gonna mess up something, but I'll try to lay it out. You take the child, and then you take his test scores from 2 years, and you subtract them, and then you compare that child to other children who have similar characteristics, and then the characteristics are broken down into some super esoteric formula, and then you feed that formula into another formula to see if the teacher has created the most possible, or not, I can't even remember the acronym, but
We're
it's
talking about the value added.
the value added. If they've added value compared to if teachers have added value to other students who have similar characteristics according to this incomprehensible formula. So it's extremely, extremely complicated. And the teacher said it was unfair. They're saying that it's not accounting for the impact of poverty on a child's ability to learn. And the state has said that, well, if we make it, if we give too much dispensation, then it's going to be impossible for a teacher to fail the rating system if the teacher has poor students or has a classroom that they're basically considering an impossible classroom to teach because there's such a high concentration of poverty. So my point was, why are they wasting time trying to adjust the formula to make it fair for the teachers, basically admitting that the classrooms that they have are unworkable and that they cannot help the children actually learn because they are only making like tiny bits of incremental progress. Like, can you get the child to make tiny bit of incremental progress compared to the other children who are also in this horrible situation? So I said they shouldn't allow the classrooms, if a classroom is that bad, they shouldn't allow it to go on like that. They need to either give some additional support, or they need to have one-on-one reading tutors or something. They have to do something rather than just make the formula.
You also suggested smaller class
Smaller
sizes.
class sizes.
Greater counseling services, and work more on deconcentration of poverty.
Right.
Yeah, the basics of the lawsuit was that of the districts that had 80% poverty, 35% of the teachers were found to be in the lower two ratings, whereas if you had 20% or less, only 1% of the teachers were found in those lower two. Does that mean that the teachers are so much better in the better? No, it doesn't. It's an unfair system. Let's get smaller classes. Let's get more counseling. Let's see if we can make these classrooms a place where education can occur. We're out of time.
Okay, well.
Thanks very much, Erica Bryant.
Thank you for having me.
us.
I appreciate it.
Say hi to Ron. Hi, Ron.
Hi, Ron.
Okay. All right, you've been watching Spotlight on Schools. You've had Erica Bryant, a columnist for the Democrat and Chronicle. Thank you for watching Spotlight on Schools. See you next month. Good night.